Welcome to Fitness Casual. We help you ditch diets and build habits no matter how busy you are. I'm Andrew Hayes, and with me is the limitless Kat Best and special guest today, MK of the Elevate Way. Welcome.
Thank you.
Do you want to kick it off with what's something that you used to believe that maybe you don't believe anymore?
Yeah. About 8 years ago, Facebook reminded me that I posted pain is weakness leaving the body.
Leaving the body. Oh, yeah.
What
I've
the
seen that
fuck?
t-shirt. Yep.
I was like, I posted that? I was like, I know I didn't. And I was horrified with myself, like absolutely horrified. I don't believe that anymore. I definitely do not ascribe to that in any way, shape, or form in any area of my life. That is wholly untrue.
That's really funny. Kat,
Yeah,
you have
That's
one?
so funny. God, I'm thinking of like similar things along that line. Or, I mean, I remember one, this isn't related to confidence or anything, but it was like sweat is like fat crying. Like I remember
Yeah.
those. I didn't believe it, but I remember that type of stuff. But yeah, a lot of that like super hardcore, like, grinding it out without like caring how you feel, like that type of stuff. I definitely used to be way more into. And I would say that stuff to people too. And I think
Yeah.
I do look back and just cringe and I'm like, oof, a little too hard and not compassionate enough at all.
I guess
It's like
isn't breathing though? That would be
self-punishment.
fat, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. No pain, no gain, that sort of vibe.
That's so funny. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I think I've lost count at this point of all the like horrible things that I believed, but I will take it a different direction outside of fitness. And I was always bad at math. This is the example I use when we do growth mindset with our clients. I was like, oh, I'm just bad at math. And I think that's a really, really stupid thing to say for a lot of reasons. One, my first job out of college was exclusively doing formulas in Excel. And I actually got pretty good at math. I just didn't really love, geometry and calculus. But it's also just such a limiting belief, which is exactly what we're going to talk about today. So we
It's
have
a great segue.
MK here, who I was just joking right before we started that outside of my mother and my wife, I have the two women who've probably influenced my life the most at the same time, which is very exciting. So MK, why don't you introduce yourself and then we'll talk about what we're going to cover today for our listeners.
Yeah, sure. So I am MK. I also go by Mickey. People get confused. It's the same person. It's me. Most people relate to me as a performance coach. It's probably the easiest way to capture what I do. A lot of people will also refer to me as a transformational coach because a lot of the work that I do is transformational in nature. Some people refer to me as like a witch. It just like runs the gamut. It depends on what we're talking about. Mostly the work that I do is, I would say, falls into one of three categories. I help people navigate change, which Hayes can talk about a little bit too, but that's a big part of the work I do is helping people navigate change, even before they know that they're in it. And the way that I do that is through communication. So my background is as a communication trainer. I was a corporate trainer for many, many years. And even before that was a facilitator with Lululemon, and then worked with Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies to help them become better outbound or outward presenters. Loved that work. It also started to leave me deeply unsatisfied because there was a lot of internal communication that was keeping people stuck and keeping them from really having the impact that they wanted to have, the confidence they wanted to feel, and step into leadership in the way they wanted to step into. And so that has now become my work, is not just the dialogue that other people hear, but the inner dialogue that navigates and kind of drives your whole life. And what does it look like to lead yourself so that you can lead others and so that you can eventually, if you want to, lead an organization. So that's the work.
Look at that. Big promises, but we're going to break all that down today, which is why you're here. And I think it's important to share how we met. And so long story short, I did basically 10 years at the same job at two different companies in tech sales. And I got to the point where every training started to feel the same. And I wanted to push myself to grow. And so I went to my manager and I was like, I want a private coach who's going to help me become better instead of being in these meetings with 300 people where I keep hearing the same stuff. Don't use filler words or whatever. And one of the trainings was with you. And I was like, I want to hire that person. So I reached out because I was just immediately impressed. And I reached out and I said, do you do private coaching? And you said, not only do I private coaching, but I'm actually leaving this company to do my private coaching full time. So it's perfect. And we worked together. And the reason I'm sharing this story is because I came to you with very tactical goals. I would like to
Mhm.
be better at my job, which is, hitting my revenue goals. I would like to close more deals or whatever it was. And what we found pretty early was that was really just 1% of it, if at all. And we started to break down why I wasn't performing as well as I wanted. And it really was all in my head. A
Mhm.
lot of it was what I believed or how I felt. And it got so deep that at one point it was like, you know what, Andrew, I think maybe you're just in the wrong career because you don't believe what you're selling anymore. And that's exactly what it was. It was 10 years of me just getting a paycheck, selling something to sell something. And that led me to basically calling Kat one day. I was like, I'm ready to do this full time. Let's go.
Yeah.
Thanks to the work that we did. And so I share that story because working in fitness and nutrition, everybody wants that thing, right? They want that supplement, that workout, that calorie goal, whatever it is that's going to get them to their goals. And all of those are important. We do a lot of science in our program, but actually what we focus on a lot is mindset. And that is what holds back so many people, and they just don't realize it. And so we're going to give a lot of tips today, but don't dismiss how important this is, because it's literally changed my life and many others too. And the stuff that Mickey said is not a joke in terms of becoming your own leader and doing things you never thought possible. And so we're going to dive into all that today.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very generous introduction. Just to go back to your story for a second, though, there's two things I would love to add quickly, and one is
Sure.
that when we first started working together, you did have a level of awareness that a lot of what at the time would be helpful for you is improving the relationships that you were building with clients. Like you had an instinct there, and I think that matters, right? Like you knew that there was something around my relationship to other people, even if we were kind of looking at the wrong environment to put that solution in. And I think that is important because that's a testament to who you are deep down. And then to double down on something that you just said, most people know this at this point, they've at least heard it, but it's still good as a reminder. We're never really chasing the thing, the goal.
Yep.
We're chasing the feeling that we think the goal will get us. And so you're a great example of that, because when you raised your hand for coaching, it was like, all right, I know that there's a specific way I want to feel. And I think that these are the goals that are going to get me there. You came super prepared. You were real clear. It was just that when we really focused on, but how do you want to feel directly and indirectly, we realized that the goals were off, right? It's like that
Right.
classic, like put the ladder up the wrong wall. Yeah. So I think that
I've
that
actually
plays
never
a
heard
role
that
here.
analogy, and I
Oh,
like
really?
that.
I forget who said it. I mean, I'm not going to take the time to Google it right now unless you want me to, but it's basically like, be careful. Like you spend your whole life climbing a ladder only to realize it's on the wrong wall.
Yeah, I love that.
Something
That's
like that.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And that is, we'll hear from Kat a little bit today as well, because this is very much part of her coaching and something that, again, blew my mind when I signed up for what do I eat to lower my cholesterol and fix my gut health. And I got the answers to that. But as I always tell people on calls, our program transparently, like just go put your height and weight in a ChatGPT. You'll get some great macros and some great recipes, and like try it. But I think what's actually holding you back isn't that your calories are off by 50 grams. It's a lot more than that. And so,
Totally.
yeah, let's dive into this. Will be applicable kind of broad strokes to whatever your goals are in life. But of course, being a fitness and nutrition podcast, we'll cover how that works as well. So we're going to start with confidence, I believe.
The word confident is a well-known word. People toss it around all the time. So it's not necessarily like, what does that mean? And yet, one thing that's really important here is like this idea of why do we struggle with confidence? Like what you hear people say a lot is, oh, well, if I were just more confident, or once I feel more confident, or if I had that person's confidence. So they over index on confidence from my vantage point. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to just feel a certain way. I work with confidence a little differently than most people do. So confidence is rooted in self-trust. And people can get that pretty quickly, right? Like the word confidence comes from confidant. And we know like, oh, I trust this person, or I trust myself, right? It's rooted in self-trust. But really what that means is it's rooted in or related to your willingness and your tolerance for risk. So what you're actually weighing is, do I feel comfortable taking a risk? Do I feel comfortable leaving this job? Do I feel comfortable raising my hand for a promotion? Do I feel comfortable going on a date with this new person? That's what confidence is working. That's kind of where it works. And you guys stop me at any point if this starts to get like so heady. You're like, what? Where did we just go? So if that's confidence, what's uncomfortable for people to then notice and talk about is, especially for women, because I primarily work with women, is, well, if confidence is rooted in self trust, then how is it different from, distinct from, and similar to self worth or self esteem, as I kind of refer to those as the same thing? And they're deeply intertwined, but they are different in a few key ways. Confidence is rooted in self trust, self worth is rooted in self love. And so, if your tolerance for risk is your confidence, your tolerance for failure is your self worth. And what tends to happen is we start assigning a confidence gap or a confidence issue when really what we're solving for is a self worth gap. Nobody wants to be told they have a gap in their self worth, right? Nobody wants to. And yet it is your ticket out of hell always, to look over there and to go, like, actually, what's going on? I like to think of self worth as like the trampoline. So if you take a risk and it goes really well, it pays off, no problem, right? Like everything's safe, everything's cool. But if you take a risk and it doesn't pay off, which oftentimes it doesn't, and over the course of our lives, we've experienced many times that it hasn't, what's your bounce back rate? That's your self worth. It's the trampoline, it's the bounce back. And again, over time, what tends to happen is we bury ourselves in the stories and the limiting beliefs, and we take on the identity of the failure. Now it's an I thing. I am the failure. I'm not good at math. We declare, like you had this great example, I'm not good at math. We declare an identity, and the trampoline starts to get like weaker and weaker. I'm going to shut up there for a second.
I'm sure Kat has a lot to say about
Okay.
diet. Yeah, go on.
No, I love that. I actually, like, all of this really resonates with myself, because I would say, like, I identify as a low confidence person, but I need to also change that because I've like grown a lot, but I definitely like, I have a very intense, like poor confidence, low self-worth, like all of that when I was younger, definitely reflected in my actions. And you are right that I think once I worked on the self-worth part, the confidence comes because you just don't care as much.
Yeah.
And I do actually love myself today. And that makes me like, I care a lot less about looking silly or whatever, because I feel good about myself. But if I don't have that, then I wouldn't be able to take a risk or do something scary. And, you know, I still think I lack confidence, but I often identify that it's just something new that I haven't done yet.
Totally.
Or it's something, that I'm not entirely sure I want to be doing. So it doesn't feel right. And like, that's kind of how I tune into that. But if I am going into something that I don't feel confident about, but I know it will be better for me, my self-worth is just like, this is what you need. Actually, it's going to help. So it pushes me to do a thing. So I think that's such a good point that, the self-love and self-worth is really at the root of all of this stuff. It's like very true.
This is a really good distinction because your confidence is supposed to wane.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating to me when we see things all over, the gram, like wherever, you see them everywhere, where it's like unshakable confidence. I'm like, no such thing. Yeah. No such thing. That only tells me that you're either overconfident, which like, hello, that's my story. I masked. There's lots of different ways to mask a loose self-worth or gaps in self-worth. I did it with overconfidence. I looked real good on paper and like presented as being very confident, but your confidence is supposed to shift because, to your point, confidence is rooted in like trust. If you're learning something new, you're not supposed to completely trust yourself. What you're supposed to trust, though, is that whatever happens, I'm going to be okay, which brings you back into that self-worth piece. Now, your self-worth, that can be unshakable. That's the work we do. Your self-worth, it'll wobble from time to time, but like that's where we want to do the unshakable stuff.
What are ways someone could identify the status of their self-worth? Like how if someone's like, I've never thought about this before, I don't know where I stand. Do we have ways that someone could think or like see where they're at?
Yeah. This is hard to do on your own.
Yeah.
And like, if we're going to go here, let's go here. But it's a little tricky to do on your own. I would say the number one way is to think about that trampoline, to think about the bounce back rate. So what you're looking for is triggers. You're looking for moments in your day. They happen all the time. All the time. I mean, my 4-year-old had a complete and utter meltdown this morning because we have just so you can get a picture of this, especially those of you that do have kids. We have guests coming into town tonight. They have a 1-year-old. The car seat needs to be rear facing for the 1-year-old. And last night, my husband re-swizzled the car seat so that it was rear facing. Didn't think this through because my son is like he's very regimented. He's very routine. He likes his order. We walked out to the car this morning and his car seat is rear facing. He's 4.5 and he's all legs. He's very tall for his age. He was distraught, to say the least, and he's a big feeler. So he started feeling a lot of emotion. Disappointment's really hard for him to manage, and he got really tired, right? Like we can all relate to this. We get triggered, we start to feel a lot of emotions, and all of a sudden we're exhausted. Got to go take a nap, got to go for a walk. But he's 4.5, he can't regulate. So he just started like screaming. And then, like, thankfully, my neighbors were like, oh, they're okay. She's not killing him. They're fine. To your question, though, Kat, there's a version of me that would have seen this situation as a complete and utter failure on my part as a mom in every possible way. And that's not how I see it. Do I feel uncomfortable? Yes. Am I running a little bit of a story in my head of like, is he going to be okay? Like, is this going to scar him for the rest of his life? I don't know. Like, should I be working more with him to manage his disappointment? But I don't take that on as a part of my identity anymore.
Yeah.
Because I've done a lot of the work to understand that it has nothing to do with me. And I'm confident in my parenting, even when I feel like, wow, there's a skill that I might be lacking here. I know how to go resource myself to find that skill so it doesn't touch my self-worth as much anymore. So I think a lot of it is like, how do you respond to triggers? What's the narrative in your head? And do you notice that you start to say things like, see, I knew it. I have no idea what I'm doing. See, I knew it. I'm not good at math. And you start reinforcing those seemingly innocuous stories, but they matter because you become a reliable narrator in your own life. Be careful what you're narrating and looking for evidence of. Do you think that answers the question for people? It's like,
yeah, I think so. Well, I think one thing in my work, especially through reading a lot of books on this topic and working with my therapist, a lot of it has come down to my values. If I know like hard concrete what my values are, that's also anytime I'm doubting what I'm doing, if I'm like, this aligns with my values, I'm good. Anytime I don't feel or I'm uncomfortable in a situation or I'm saying things I don't mean, it's not aligned with my values, and then I don't feel good. So I feel like if I know what my values are, it really helps with confidence and navigating those things. And that's a way that when I'm kind of in a spiral moment, I've been trying to tap into like, does this align with my values or not? Like if I think I'm someone who does this and I'm doing the opposite, it's not with my values. Why am I doing this? And then you kind of circle back to that. So I've always found that to be a little bit more of a tactical way to understand when I have no clue, like why I feel a certain way or why someone gives me a certain reaction and I feel bad about it. I'm like, what is that doing? So if I go back to the values, it's I think more tactical way to just be like, where am I at with this? And I find that to be helpful. Which is hard to know. Like knowing your values actually is really hard. And once you kind of get the ball rolling, you're like, oh, I have all these values. But it's like, if I'm actually not doing any of this stuff, is it really my value? So it's kind of fun to also weed out the things that maybe you think you care about and you're like, actually, I don't.
Right.
I'm laughing because this is an exercise that Mickey and I did.
We do. And values could change. Values should change.
Yes.
But yeah, Hayes is right. It's one of the first things I do when I'm working with people is like, not one of the first things actually. I don't do it that early, but it's what are your values that you know of right now? And also getting curious about like, how long have those been your values? What purpose do they serve? Because sometimes you realize you've taken on the values of other people around you.
Yes.
And that takes time, right? Like that takes a discernment, but that reinforces the trust piece too, the confidence, and I would argue the self-worth at the same time, where it's like constantly coming back to the system inside of me, what's important to me. But in the work, I imagine, like you guys are doing, and I've worked with you too, to be clear, like this went both ways. Sometimes you have competing values. And then that gets tricky. Like I have a commitment to wake up and go to the gym by 7 a.m. But like here I am at 6:20 and I didn't sleep well and I'm feeling really tired. So which one do I honor? I have a competing commitment. Which one do I honor? That also can be a rabbit hole sometimes.
And this is what we see with our clients. It's either work or family or both that they are always last. And so I'm always talking to, especially to moms, but dads too. It's the phrase I like is don't set yourself on fire to keep others warm. And it's really tough to see people come to our program, come to challenges, ask for help, whatever. And then they're like, oh, but my kid has baseball practice. My job's really busy. And it's like, I think what we need to do is just take a step back and like, what is actually important to you?
Yes.
Because maybe baseball practice with a mom who's like really miserable is less important than just having a happy, healthy mom who's present. You know what I mean? And so I will plug this at the end, but we are going to have an exercise coming out of this podcast for this reason, because I think a lot of people are listening right now and they're like, oh, maybe I have some work to do to go deep, just like Andrew, who thought he had it figured out and then was like, nope, we're starting from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So we'll plug that at the end, but we'll get actionable on this too. So in terms of confidence, just to recap some actionable things besides the exercise that we're going to have available in the show notes. We're talking about limiting beliefs, right? And so it's yes, what you've been through is tough for some people, like diet culture that can start when you're 10 years old. You know, we've had clients who are like, my mom put a Slim Fast bar in my lunch in middle school. Like I still remember that. So I think it's important to validate that, but it's also important to then rebuild your trust through small wins. Is that right, Mickey?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's the identity piece too, not just like it may not seem obvious. Limiting beliefs can get tricky for people, but it's the identity. When you look at that Slim Fast bar in your lunchbox, what did you take on? Like, what did you make that mean? Because we're all unique individuals, and this should feel empowering, right? But like triggers live inside of us. They don't live in the outside world. And that should feel empowering, even though it's like a little uncomfortable. You're like, oh, like I have to take responsibility for that. And it's like, yeah, but you want to, because then you can change it. So maybe it's not a limiting belief, but it's an identity. It's a story. My interpretation of that would have been different. All three of us would have had a different interpretation, and then we would have run with it. That's a big part of it too. You said something interesting, or you gave a really clear example that I think is also interesting around like the work that I do with overfunctioning women, right? So it's the woman who simultaneously wants to be at the baseball game, but also wants to take care of herself and improve her health. And like to Kat's point of, well, what do I value? This is a great example of where it's like, but I value both. I value being a present mom, and I'm defining presence as being at, my kid's baseball game. And I also value taking care of myself. So how do I negotiate those two things? Those are the moments where I think very simply, if you want to do the deep work, it's asking yourself, what's the story I've created here? So it's not the thing. It's never like going to the game or not going to the game. It's never going to the gym or not going to the gym. It's never that. It's always what's the story I created around going to the gym, not going to the gym, going to the baseball game, not going to the baseball game. That's the deeper work. You don't have to do that on your own. The shortcut, honestly, one of the easiest questions to ask, and I think it gets people to an answer pretty quickly, is just stop. Put those two decisions in front of you, like separate yourself from them. You are the eye of the storm. They're the storm. From this place, ask yourself about a 5 to 7 day period from now, when I'm looking back on this moment, what decision would make me proud? Where would I feel the most pride and completeness for myself? Which decision? Just for today. You don't have to like change your whole life around it, but like just for today, looking back about a week from now, which would I be more proud of? And usually that can get people to an answer. They might not like the answer. They may be like, it's actually going back to bed, or it's actually going to the gym. But then we deal with the discomfort of it, right? Then we can work from there.
Right.
Sorry, I just wanted to go back to that because it's a really good example that I think, or I hope, ties kind of everything together that we were talking about.
Yeah, that's great. And that segues well into some of the now we're talking about identity, values. Like one of the things we talk about is reframing. So telling a different story. Like talk through, Mickey, what that looks like. What are some ways that someone can do that when they're on a journey? Let's say they're doing nutrition for the first time in a while. They've been beaten down for a long time. Or fitness, or even just career, like what are some ways to help shift that narrative internally?
Yeah, well, I think one way, without even shifting the narrative, is to make sure you celebrate your successes. So people always ask me, not just like what Kat was talking about, like, okay, well, how do I improve my confidence? And also, how do I improve my self-worth if they are slightly different? But the easiest way to improve your confidence is to look for evidence that you are doing a good job. So it's celebrating your wins. And again, like we all know this at this point, but your brain is wired for security and safety. And it has this well-intentioned way of getting security and safety by looking for everything that it can fix, solve for, that it's in danger of. So some of this is like needing to compassionately recognize that and work against it, right? Like don't allow that to take over. And that's work. That's maturity. And a lot of us didn't get those skills when we were growing up. So like thankfully, that's why I have a job, right? Until we all start becoming better parents, and then I don't have a job anymore, which would be fine by me. But that's the easiest way, is like every day, have a list on your phone. Tony Robbins has some, I don't want to like plug him on this podcast necessarily, but he does have a good he has good imagery here, which is like a trophy room. But I think like trophies could be different sizes, right? Like there could be like the small size trophies and then like the big size accomplishments, but it's more than your accomplishment. It's like, where did I have a success just today? Like, wow, I really was patient with my son this morning. That's a win. Even if the situation itself felt hard and isn't ideal, it was a win that I was super patient with him. I think that's the easiest way. And then of course you can get into language, belief rewriting. Language is really important in the work I do. Again, communication matters. It creates our reality. So when you say things like, I'm bad at math, it becomes a truth. So what does that actually mean? And is it just like, what's more true? It's probably not true that you're bad at it. It's probably more true that like, I don't enjoy it. So can you write the true version? I do this with Milo a lot too, where he's like, I don't know how to trace. He's trying to trace right now. He's like, I don't know how to trace. And I'm like, hey, why don't you try? I'm still learning how to trace. And if you're still learning how to do something, what would you do? And he's like, ask mommy for help. I'm like, cool. So I can help.
Love that. Yeah, I immediately jumped to the scale, which is something that most people have been taught as a measure of your success, whether it comes to fitness, weight loss, whatever. Is it one tool? Sure. But we just have so many clients who have a trophy room just from a week of trophies, and then they step on the scale on a Friday and they're like, ugh. And it's like, yeah. Wow. And I totally understand, like this is like 90% of what Kat's doing sometimes with our clients. And so I love that analogy. But this is why, when people ask about coaching, whether it's with you, Mickey, or a nutrition coach or whatever, it's just like, sometimes you're your own worst enemy. And I know that you want the calories or the whatever, but like, if you're not picturing that trophy room, you're going to set yourself back because you're telling this story in your head and not rewriting it. So Kat, I don't know if you have anything to add. I'm sure this is hitting home quite a bit.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think the biggest conversation I have around this type of stuff is scale, mindset, related things, or, when women are in a situation they don't have control, they tend to like really freak out of like, I'm on vacation or whatever. But I find that women who definitely present as like low self-worth, low self-confidence, sometimes will not accept small wins. They really push them away. And when I try to say like, oh, but you've done all these amazing things, they're like, yeah, but it never lasts. It's like a lot of like this, and it's really hard to break ground there. And it's almost like I have to go back to like the most granular thing to try to get them to like accept or feel good about. What would you say for people who just really like won't accept any small win because they don't believe that to even be real, even though it's like literally real? They're just so stuck in like thinking that nothing will stick. So they're already in like, I have failed in the future mode, even though the present is showing that it's working. Like that's a really tricky situation.
It is. And I don't know if you're going to like my answer to this, but that's a safety security issue.
Yeah.
It's a safety security issue. It doesn't feel safe to them to notice and accept a small win. They only know failure. It actually feels safer. And I very much relate to this. It actually feels safer to notice when I'm not doing well, because then I can fix it and then I regain control.
Yeah.
So what you're dealing with there is a safety security issue. And I think even knowing that can be helpful, as a coach, as a friend. I mean, this doesn't apply just to the work that the three of us do. It's like, even as a friend, you cannot convince someone. First of all, you cannot willpower or force or shame yourself into achieving something. And you certainly cannot do that to somebody else. Nor can you just continually point to the evidence that they're not ready to see because they're not ready to see it. In terms of what you can do, this is where I say, I don't know if you're going to like my answer, but sometimes it's actually validating. Wow, this is like, it's really hard for you to notice your wins. How interesting.
Oh, yeah. Right?
And like, I'm sure.
And then they switch. Yeah. They really like go silent and they're like, oh, or sometimes I'll be like, I sense that you're just like, just calling out what I see of like, you're kind of like not accepting these things, even though it's true. Like, what's going on? And I saw something else of like finding other moments that they've done well at in life and like almost pivoting to that of like, okay, what are things you have done that you feel good about? And then we kind of like go there. But you are so right that it's like, if I call that out, at least people are like, oh, I am doing that, because they don't even know.
They don't. And what creates safety and security is validation, not correction, not pivoting, not solving, not fixing. That actually perpetuates the problem. And like Hayes is probably laughing because this is a tool that we use in sales. And so in his former life, this was a lot of what we worked on initially, but it applies to personal relationships and it applies everywhere. Honestly, I think if people knew how to validate one another, we would change the world, frankly.
Yeah, solutions are not the way to go unless it's clear someone wants one. And I think this is a big male female issue too, is like women don't want solutions. We want
No,
validation. Like I
that's
don't,
right.
if I say something, I don't want to be told how to fix it unless I specifically say, hey, I want a solution to this thing. Like that really annoys people when they're not looking for that. And from a coach, you can really go into solution mode hard. And I
Yeah,
always try to like actually not go there unless I feel it out that we're ready for a solution. Because, you know, if
absolutely.
someone can't believe that they can do something, it's not helpful if you just give them more things to do.
You haven't determined the timing of this podcast actually, but the podcast that Kat and I are recording after this one is about how to get a loved one to focus more on their health, because it's something we hear all the time, spouses and parents. And the short answer is that you really can't, but we are going to
You
give some of
can't.
the tips around like how to do it, you know, tactfully and over time. But it's funny that it came up because it's something we hear so often. It's not just everyone else's journey, but
Yeah.
also the people around them.
You can't make people look at what they're not ready to look at. All you can do is, first of all, take a stand for the high. I'm going to go back to Kat's language with values. All you can do is take a stand for the highest value, which is like love, that I care about you, and to share. I think that's the only way that I see needles move, is to share your own personal. Don't make it about them.
Mm-hmm.
It's making it about you, you know, and time and being really patient. Honestly, people just want space. Weirdly, when you give space, then people kind of come around a little bit.
Yep. I love it.
I had a client say to me, this just made me think of something really funny, but I had a client say to me the other day that, how'd she say it? As I'm learning to not, she gets really involved with people. She micromanages, like it's showing up everywhere in her personal and professional life. And she said something to me like, as we're doing this work, I'm learning to like take those steps back, to pause. And it's tricky because it, you know, it's like I'm caring less.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, are you caring less or are you controlling less?
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, actually, I'm just controlling less. And that's how it feels to people with their friends. But I care about them. I'm like, I believe you. And you're trying to fix it. You're trying to control it, which is a you thing, not a them thing.
That's right. That's exactly right. So just to recap, first of all, I think we've lost every male listener, which I am like partly
I hope
kidding.
not.
And I mean, I just think it's like, we always talk about how our program is so predominantly women. And I think this is exactly why. I think it like terrifies men to think about some of their internal struggles and how it relates to their diet choices. We do get men in the program and they kick butt, and it's awesome to see. And so if you, while you can't convince someone, you could maybe send a male in your life this episode and take a listen. But I'm partly kidding. But just to recap, because we've covered a lot, both of you jump in, but it really starts with self-worth. I think a lot of people think about confidence, but actually just revisiting what your values really are so important before starting a journey. And I think it's funny because my wife is a financial coach and she does the same exercise. And it's like everyone just wants to get out of debt, or they just want to retire early. And she's like, well, wait a second, we got to talk about your values first. And what she sees with every single person is like how they spend their money and how they actually have values are completely out of whack. And I think we see so much of that too in nutrition and fitness. And so we're going to have that exercise for you in the show notes. So make sure you work on your values. And then from there, it's really about retelling your story, right? If you're saying you're bad at math, or you're saying you can't lose weight, or your hormones are working against you, or whatever, it's really important to start to shift that narrative, because as you said, Mickey, if you say that to yourself, it becomes true. And that's a huge problem. And in our program, and even in some of our challenges and webinars that we do, we always have this pyramid. If you picture like 3 pieces of a pyramid, or as Kat likes to say, tiers of a wedding cake, at the very top is the calories that you eat. Like that's such a small piece. At the very bottom is your mindset. And if you are starting a journey with the belief that it's not going to work for the 15th time, well, then that's exactly what's going to happen. And so it's really important to reframe that narrative and tell yourself that, no, actually, you're creating a new identity, and this time it's going to stick. And how you do that, by the way, is celebrating your wins like your life depends on it, I think is what you said, Mickey. Picturing that trophy room. Scale's going to go up, scale's going to go down. You might put on a bathing suit and it doesn't look the way you thought it was going to look. Like these things are all going to happen. Or you're going to have a day where you're low energy, you wake up tired. Like you said, all of these things are going to work against you sometimes, but you still have all these other wins that you should be celebrating. Drinking water, stretching, whatever it is. And the nice thing about functional nutrition is there's also a physical element where if all you do is drink more water than you did yesterday, you're also going to feel better. It's
Yeah.
not just the mental win, it's also that your body is now improving. And I think that's what so many people forget too, is the January 1st crowd is like, let's do everything at once. And it's like, well, that's just really difficult. That's a lot of change. You do water for a week and then maybe 10 minutes earlier to bed for another week, and then a couple more vegetables during the week for the third week. Like suddenly your body's really working with you. And so not only are you reframing your own narrative, but you also have the physical changes. And so this is how that flywheel really starts. And so this is some really good things to stop and think about, and do the exercise that we've put in the show notes. What did I
Yeah.
miss? What else should we wrap up with?
That
What do
was
we have?
such a good synopsis. You're like the chat GPT for my brain. That was amazing. That was like such a great synopsis and it flowed so well. I don't know how you did that on the fly. The only thing that I would reiterate and perhaps add is it is that distinction between the being and the doing. And I love that you guys are so good at saying, yeah, but how do you feel? Right. And that's more security and safety, just waiting for you on the other side of being able to answer that question. How do I feel? Do you feel better? Do you feel different? And chasing the feeling versus the number on the scale or the macros or the whatever. They all matter, but they're the system, right? That help you get to that ultimate goal, which is the feeling. And this is not mine, so I can't take credit for this, but it's a really simple formula. I think it helps people a lot, and it'll again maybe help take some of this deeper inner work that like people like, I don't want to look at that. I don't even know how to look at that if I wanted to look at it, and give them a tactical tool that they can use. So this comes from a book by Michael Bungay Stainer. It's like a coaching book, but I love it. It's a formula that you fill in the blank for with anything that you need to. It's when I feel, fill in the blank. So when I feel frustrated because I'm looking at a scale. Okay. When I look at the scale, it's not the number I want and I feel frustrated. Instead of fill in the blank. So instead of going to eat a bowl of ice cream for breakfast because I just like give up, I'm going to fill in the blank. It's really hard to change habits when you don't know what you're going to change them with.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think part of what this does is it gives you something to do. So I'm going to reach out to Kat, or I'm going to go for a walk outside, or I'm going to put my scale in another room for the next 2 weeks. But like, what are you going to choose to do? So there's the doing, but that helps create that being identity shift little by little.
I like that. I love almost like a trigger journal. So if people
Yeah.
are aware of what sets them off, if we at least know that, then we can work in a solution or
That's
a
right.
coping mechanism or something. So if people just take account of like, oh, in the after, or I skipped lunch, so I got really hungry and I binge ate all my snacks and now I feel bad. It's like, well, the trigger was not eating lunch. So now we just have, now we place a little bit more importance on, or eating every like 5 hours. So you're not getting super hungry. And for a lot of people, it's just like, oh, that's pretty simple. I can do that. You know, and we're just looking at like, instead of it just being like, I lost control. In the moment, I lost all my control. It's like, no, physiologically, your body needed food bad. And it makes you overeat because you need fuel. And it's like, we can also apply like how rationally this makes sense. Like, you're not crazy. It makes sense why this happened. And here's how to prevent it. So I also find like bringing common sense to things that people think are like them, that they have no control or they're bad or whatever. If we just bring like, hey, this actually isn't crazy at all. Like, this makes a lot of sense why your body did this, or why if this happens, you do this. Like, if we just make it kind of seem like, oh yeah, like we know why this is happening, I feel like that's empowering too, to come with a solution. And then if you actually write it down, you can have a whole list of things that you're actually aware of, and you're just accumulating evidence also of like what sets you off, and then solutions of what to do. But I do think, and I want to ask you, in the moment, so I know when we look after the fact or before, it's easy to find these things, but in the moment when people are like spiraling or that thing, I find that can be really hard to switch, or to be like switching gears in the brain. Do you have any suggestions for that when people are like in that state of like heightened something that they're feeling?
Yeah. So you're talking about like, I already binge ate the snacks.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
And
or
even if I
am about to, I am opening up the package, like I am preparing, like, because usually at that point people are like, I am so over the edge, I'm gonna do the thing. But I still think like we can disrupt at that moment. It's just hard.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it is too. But having the plan matters. I mean, you guys have probably heard the quote from James Clear, that like, we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. Like what you're talking about is, let's have a system in place. If we know that the trigger is not eating lunch, then let's eat lunch. And better yet, let's create a system that supports that. Packing it in the morning, setting an alarm on your phone, like create the system. And yet there's still going to be days where like life fucking happens, right? So then what do? And I think those are the moments when having that formula, even to apply in the moment, can be helpful. So it's not it's I am
I
feeling.
am. Yeah.
I am. Here it is. I am feeling. Or I notice that I feel it, or I acknowledge that I feel. That language matters, PS, because it's not I am. I am not a loser. No, I notice that I'm feeling really defeated, separation. And then I think there's a couple things that can be helpful, which is one, if they're doing this by themselves, they don't have you to lean on. It's just saying one decision's not going to make or break me. What is actually true here is not that I'm bad at math. What is actually true is I'm feeling defeated and I'm hungry. And one decision is not going to make or break me. So again, it's the story that I'm telling about the circumstance. It's never the circumstance. What am I making this mean that gets me in trouble? And sometimes just that brief pause, again, it's a nervous system thing. We're just getting back to security and safety, gives them enough breathing room to go, well, what if I just ate one snack and like then just checked in with myself? It's a pause. Like, I don't know if that answers your question, but it's like pausing is a power move. And we are really bad in dominant culture. We are really bad at pausing. Go, 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 fix it, do it now. What's the answer? Like, just take a breath.
Yeah.
Hold on. Like,
I'm
calm
reading
your nervous system. Yeah.
The Confidence Gap right now.
Yes. Oh, what a
okay.
good book.
So that's where, and I'm at the part, which I love, and I've used this on clients, where it's like, if you have a feeling of that you're fat, you could say, I am fat. And then you go, I have a thought that I'm fat. Now we're distancing yourself. And then you go, I notice I'm having the thought that.
Yes.
And now we are like on a different planet from the thought. And I love that because like I'm a big like internal thinker too. I think so much and I play with my thoughts. And when you do that, it's like, wow, like we are in a different planet. And then they also talk about saying your thoughts in your head in like a weird accent or like a Borat voice. Like say your self-limiting beliefs in a funny accent and you're just gonna laugh and it makes it really funny and different. And I think that's like some really fun stuff as well.
It's great because then you realize like this thing is a machine that you actually have power over. Beliefs like rock your world when you really start to get into them because we think we are our thoughts and it's very disempowering.
Yeah.
And The Confidence Gap is a great book. The only bone I have to pick with that for women, the only bone I have to pick with this, and I don't know if you guys are going to want to go down this rabbit hole. You might be like, we're going to stop right here. First of all, some people don't know what the confidence gap is. So just to quickly define the gap itself, like the gap that is being referred to. The confidence gap says that until we have a feeling of confidence, we won't do something, right? It's this idea that like, we wait to feel confident before we take action, which I completely agree with. We over-index on confidence, just like we started our conversation off today. We wait to feel confident. We go learn another skill. We go ask our friend, do you think this is the right way forward? We try to go resource ourselves with the confidence before we take the action. Fine. Total agreement there. The part that I don't agree with as much for women specifically, because we're talking about security and safety. If confidence is rooted in self-trust and your willingness to take a risk and your tolerance to take that risk, our dominant culture is set up in a way where the people who have the most ability to take a risk and fail are white heteronormative men.
Yeah.
And so a lot of
that's where my head was going. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like a lot of the advice in the book then becomes about, you just got to do the thing. It's a little bit of fake it till you make it, which is one of those beliefs that I no longer believe, because fake it till you make it for women in our dominant culture leads to overconfidence. And it leads to a lot of things.
Or acting like a man. And then you lose your feminine essence. Oh yeah, that was me. That fully has been me, like heavy masculine energy. And then even my therapist was like, she helped me look more at that. And I'm like, well, what the hell is feminine energy? And it's like messy, go with the flow, creative, like. And I'm like, I'm none of that.
That's not
because I've conditioned myself to be hard and like do the things and like all of that. And I'm like, ooh, this is interesting to like really realize.
Yeah. Well, and listen, like every single one of us has masculine and feminine. Like they coexist. They're supposed to. We live in a duality. Light doesn't exist without dark. Masculine doesn't exist without feminine. You and I healthily, is that a word? Live on a scale that pushes us more towards the masculine because that is authentic to who we are.
Mm-hmm.
What we want to notice though is when it's coming out of shadow, when it's coming out of ingesting dominant culture, why wouldn't we embody more of the masculine? Because they look like they're succeeding.